impunity for me, prosecution for thee. Multiple developments today underscoring just how divorced the Trump Justice Department is from justice and facts and reality as it pursues retribution for anyone Donald Trump believes has ever wronged him or sought to hold him accountable, and seeks to protect anyone seen as a political ally to Donald Trump, even if they are violent and may represent a threat to public safety. 2 federal prosecutors have been put on leave after they filed a sentencing memo seeking 27 months of prison time for Taylor Taranto. He is a pardoned January 6 insurrectionist who brought illegal guns to President Barack Obama's home back in 2023. In their sentencing memo, the prosecutors wrote this about the Capitol insurrection and Taranto's role in it. Quote, on January 6, 2021, thousands of people comprising a mob of rioters attacked the U.S. Capitol while a joint session of Congress met to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election. Taranto was accused of participating in the riot in Washington, D.C. by entering the U.S. Capitol building. After the riot, Taranto returned to his home in the state of Washington, where he promoted conspiracy theories about the events of January 6, 2021. Now, we saw those events with our own eyes, and those descriptions about this individual are simply the facts, plain and simple. Prosecutors said that Taranto showed up outside President Barack Obama's home shortly after Donald Trump posted his address with a cache of illegal guns and ammunition, saying, quote, gotta get the shot, stop at nothing to get the shot, end quote. Again, those are the words, those are the facts. He was then found guilty, based on those words and those facts, in a bench trial back in May. But if the facts are inconvenient for Donald Trump and his Justice Department, and a punishable offense for those who dare to work off the facts in some of their cases. In some cases, in other cases, the facts may actually be the beginning of the end and lead to Trump's undoing. Brand new reporting from Politico reveals what could be a, quote, fatal flaw in the case brought by Trump-appointed U.S. Attorney Lindsey Halligan against New York Attorney General Tish James. From that reporting, quote, the politically charged mortgage fraud indictment against New York Attorney General Tish James accuses her of lying to lenders in order to get a favorable loan rate on a second home. She then rented the property the indictment alleges in violation of the terms of the loan she obtained. But there's a glaring issue with that accusation. The mortgage contract James signed does not prohibit renting out the house, according to Politico's new review of the contract and legal and real estate experts. In fact, the key language in the contract expressly allows renting under certain conditions. Collision of facts and Donald Trump is where we start today with some of our favorite reporters and friends. New York Times Justice Department reporter Glenn Thrush is back. Also joining us, senior editor for Slate, host of the Amicus podcast, Dahlia Lithwick is here. And with me at the table, former DHS chief of staff during Donald Trump's first term, Miles Taylor is here. He is also the co-founder of Defiance.org, which we'll talk about in a minute. Glenn Thrush, I start with you. And the first story we shared with our viewers, tell me what you and your colleagues are reporting about this case.
Well, it's basically exactly as you articulated it, with one addition that we've also determined, which is Jeanine Pirro's office. And we should tell people that the U.S. Attorney for Washington, D.C., who ostensibly ordered this, was Jeanine Pirro, late of Fox News, a friend of the president's, also makes some cameo appearances on Saturday Night Live, I believe. An impersonator does. Essentially saying that that language was an error. Now, I will refer you to the great work of our colleagues, Ryan Riley with NBC and MSNBC, Alan Foyer with us, who covered these January 6th riot cases exhaustively. Mm-hmm. And needless to say, that is what happened that day. The original description of this was accurate in the documents. And the only thing, the comp that this really harkens back to is the infamous case of Erez Rouvaini, as you recall, mm-hmm. who was the Justice Department immigration lawyer who had the temerity to state in court that the charges against Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the deportation to El Salvador of Abrego Garcia, was a mistake, was a paperwork error. And for that, Ruvani, who was pretty well regarded inside the department and was not seen as somebody who was antithetical to Trump's getting tough on immigration agenda, he was fired. And before he was fired, he was bullied by the department. So basically, what seems to have happened, and I can't impute this, our reporting doesn't show this, but in the past, what has happened is the notion that a line attorney, a career person, would contradict the larger agenda and messaging of the White House tends to get punished, and that appears what happened in this instance.
Glenn, let me just push you, though. Are they being asked to lie in sentencing memos now? Because he seems that if that's where we are, he had to either lie in a sentencing memo to a judge or, I mean, where are we? Are they not supposed to tell the truth in a sentencing memo, or are the prosecution supposed to be dropped before they get there?
Well, look, under Pirro, we have seen some extraordinary developments. We're also seeing them in Chicago in terms of these ICE protests, of cases being brought against individuals by sitting U.S. attorneys that are then rejected by grand juries. I can't tell you how unusual that is. When I was talking to attorneys in D.C., they estimated to me that in like one of every 2,000 or 3,000 cases that might happen. It was just something, it was like a once in a career thing. That is now happening with startling regularity. So what is going on right now is the backstop of the judiciary, at least in places like the District of Columbia and Chicago. You're having judges and juries making these determinations and either throwing out cases or going back to the Justice Department and chiding them for giving misinformation. But like, I don't care what you put in the 4 lines of a legal document, the Justice Department, the riot at the Capitol took place. So this larger attempt by the White House and the Justice Department enabling it to rewrite the history of January 6th, I don't think is going to work. And I think it's just intended to please the audience of 1 or perhaps the audience of 2 if you throw Stephen Miller onto the pile.
And Glenn, is the fact of this individual bringing illegal guns to former President Barack Obama's house a feature of this story or a bug?
I think it is. I think it's neither. I think it's just the facts on the ground. But I will say that it points to another thing that you suggested, Nicole, and that is there does appear to be an entirely different standard depending on who the perceived victim of an action is. I will give you a perfect example of this. A couple of weeks ago, Harmeet Dillon, the head of the Civil Rights Division, I believe, issued 3 tweets, and 1 video calling out the brief detention of a far-right journalist during the Portland ICE protests. The details on the ground are still fuzzy. There appeared to have been an altercation. Some people claim this guy threw a punch. Other people claim he was jumped. In any event, the head of the Civil Rights Division took it upon herself to say she was going to investigate that. And then you see this instance where the documents are revised in this particular cases. I haven't done a systematic analysis. I can't draw a great deal of conclusions, but prima facie, you are seeing, in another example would be Bondi's call for maximum penalties against people who vandalized Tesla dealerships back when Elon Musk was doing Doge. So I think that is very much an important question and that I think warrants more exploration.
Miles.